Okay. Good afternoon. If I can have your attention. Good afternoon, HLN members. It's 3 o'clock and we are now live streaming, finally. So I just have to make you aware, we are live streaming. If you don't want to be included in the recording, you'll have to exit the room now. The recording will only be shared with Hampshire County Council and its partners, just for your reference. So we're live streaming now, and then we will keep a recording that will go up as a link on the HLN Yammer page, and we will use it in the future for some other digital learning opportunities that we're planning. Okay, a couple of words before we begin. Thank you very much for all the feedback we received from the first event in February. It was excellent and lots of good comments there in terms of ideas for future events. And I can assure you that gets all the way passed up to John and the senior leadership, so they do have an understanding of what you'd prefer to be happening in HLN, which is great. We have a fantastic speaker who will be joining us shortly. A couple of extra things. Please hold in your diary the date of the 23rd of May, Wednesday afternoon. We'll be sending out an email about it, but it's an afternoon event between 2 and 4. But just so you know now, but we'll be planning that and sending you invitations accordingly. Anything else? I think that's probably it. So I'd like to introduce our speaker this afternoon, Mr. Mark Catchlove, who's the Director of Knowledge and Insights Group for the Herman Miller Ltd company. He's going to be talking to us today about the future of work. It's something he's very expert on. He's spoken many times to many companies in the public and private sector in the UK and internationally. So we're very fortunate to have him sharing his expertise with us this afternoon. And after his presentation, we'll have a Q&A session. If you do have a question, please make sure we give you a microphone so that your question and comments can be captured on the recording. Okay? Make sure you have a tea, cup of coffee and a biscuit, because we are having a late lunch and learn. And with that, I'd like to introduce Mark.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. When you hear about the future of work, sometimes you almost don't listen because it's too far out there, but I'm talking about the future being next week and next year and the next. This is the near future. And just a quick advert, Herman Miller is an office furniture manufacturer. This is a new factory we've built in Melksham in Wiltshire. We actually make stuff in the UK. We're one of the few manufacturers. We employ 300 people there. And in fact, all our office staff are about to move there as well. And our world is about manufacturing products for offices, for healthcare, and for the home. But my world is not about products. My world is very much about people and how they use our products and what products do we need to make people happier. So I'm going to share with you what I call the new office landscape. It's a little overview. We also recently got awarded the Crown Commercial Supplier Certificate, so we are registered with the government, and we're doing lots of work with government organisations because you're aware that they're centralising a lot of their services in hubs, because that is huge change, but it affects people, and that's what we're trying to understand more. So I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask you to turn to someone near to you. I'm actually even going to ask you to get up and go and speak to someone that maybe you don't talk to very much. I'm going to ask you to do two things over 2 minutes. I'd love to tell, where are you when you get ideas? So for me, it's walking. I love walking. That's what I do when I kind of, it doesn't look like it with this svelte body, I know, but I love, if I'm struggling with something, I'll just go for a walk, whether it's within the building or outside. So that's where I get my ideas. And I would like you to tell the person what you'd rather be doing than being sat here now. In other words, what is your hobby? So for me, it's guitar playing, singing, and photography. That's what I love to do. So if you misbehave, I will go and get a guitar and sing if you don't behave. So it's 2 minutes to literally get up and move, go and speak to someone. Where do you get ideas? What is it you'd rather be doing? And then you're going to hear a really annoying whistle asking you to stop. And I'm sorry for the live streamers, but that's the reality of a workshop. So go.
Sometimes it's waking up just in the morning.
whistle is really loud, so I warn you. Okay. In case your mate's got headphones on, that'll blast him. Okay. Okay, thank you. Please take your seats. So my first question is, what hobbies came up? What kind of things would people rather be doing than sat here? Golf, was that? Running. Gardening. Okay. Okay, it's normally about the fourth or fifth one before we get one that involves sitting down, because everyone, you know, sort of, I'm athletic, you know, I'm a horse rider, I've got sitting down computer games. Okay, that's okay. Eating. Cycling. Reading. Okay. Watching sport. I'm going to stop there. Is there any chance of getting a pen that might work? Just a little question. Sorry. The reason I do this actually is that when you're managing people, you're not managing departments. You're not managing corporations. You're not managing teams. You're managing golfers and runners and cyclists and because actually what we are really good at is grouping people under one umbrella. Because who's in finance here? We all know what finance people are like. Give them a spreadsheet and they're really happy. And actually those assumptions, marketing, any HR, they're all soft and actually we make these huge assumptions about people, but sometimes we're really, really wrong. And we have to go very, very careful about doing that. So my next question to you was, where are you when you get ideas? So I'll start with walking. Driving. Sorry?
Driving. Sorry.
Driving. Bed. Shaving. I heard someone say loo. So you're allowed to say it. I heard someone say it. Yeah, it was you. I thought, yeah. I was in Saudi Arabia doing this talk, and this guy came up to me and said, "Mark, can I say the word toilet in your seminar?" As most people do, but so yeah. Anyone else?
Coffee shop.
Coffee shop. Online. Traveling. Chatting. Can you see something? There's a theme here. What have none of you said? What have you said? What none of you said? Desks or meetings. This is the real challenge of the world of work, that actually ideas very rarely come in the workplace. However, I'm finished now, sorry, but thank you very much. You've done it. That's a lovely pen, just like, you know. Very rarely do ideas come in the workplace. However, can I suggest that the guy that's shaving, when you have an idea, I'm assuming it's the guy, by the way, when you have an idea, you don't ring your colleagues and say, "I've had a great idea about that project. Why don't you pop round and we both have a shave together?" Because actually, ideas aren't innovation. And the innovation of ideas needs space and needs people to meet. And this is that new world of work that is changing beyond our imagination. And that world of work is changing for public and private sector. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a history lesson, but our research starts here in 1968. 50 years ago this year, we published a book, and I'll send a couple of copies for you to read. It's not in a PDF version because Adobe Acrobat wasn't around in 1968. But this guy called Robert Probst is blamed for the cubicle. He invented the first screen-based system, but I'm sorry, accountants got involved and then it became a cubicle. because it could squeeze more people in. But look at this thinking from 1968. For most of us, the office is a place where we go to suffer a variety of environmental accidents. He didn't mean as in ecology, but it's just where you sat mattered. Because he then said that some turn out to be advantageous, giving us an unfair leverage over others. Where you sat mattered. Where you sat in your school class mattered. It affected you. But most of the time, however, they are bad accidents, wasters of effectiveness, vitality, health, and motivation. 1968. He then said 50 years has brought little change to the functional format of offices. Office work has undergone a revolution. The physical environment lags behind. I would challenge you to say that there are many organizations and companies that, this is now 50 years since this book has been published, and the office environment still lags behind. And this final quote here, the business of people talking to each other, in other words, developing those ideas that you've had, is a very serious consideration. It is by far the most expensive achievement of offices. We don't need offices anymore, which is really crazy for a guy that sells office furniture. The fact is, we still use them because they give us value. The reason that we have them is that there is this hierarchy of communication. And this, eye contact, is always the best communication. It's always weird when you mention eye contact, because now you're worried, shall I look at him or shall I? Shall I look him in the eye? Because it matters, that whole idea. Eye contact is important. We talk about, how their eyes were empty, how they had honest eyes. All I could see he was lying. Eyes are really important. But the far most expensive achievement, the grouping of people together in ways that allows conversational exchange. And in the survey that was done for you, it's interesting that actually most people here, your work day is a mix of both collaborating with others and working alone. Some of the upsides of your offices is that you can work together, that you have the opportunity. Some of the downsides is that sometimes means some of you, when you want to work alone, you don't have that opportunity. And by the way, the results of this could have been published by any organization. You are not exceptional. It's very, very similar to others. So work has changed. So a little bit of history lesson now about the world of work, okay? So you didn't know you were going to get this, but this is the history. When offices were first designed, we didn't have a template apart from factories. So we started off with something that we call the era of industry, where offices were incredibly hierarchical. And if you've seen those old pictures, which was, someone sat controlling those typing pools, which were just scary. I actually started work as a clerk typist. That whole idea that it was almost like a factory. Very hierarchical, very basic tools. That's a typewriter. Some of you have never seen or used a typewriter before. A friend of mine gave their son a typewriter, and he said, "This is brilliant. It prints while you type." But of course, the places reflected this era of industry, incredibly hierarchical. Offices for the people that were never there. And they were big offices, and they were big chairs. I can never understand why, in this era of industries, typist chairs had no armrests. Because typists had arms. I don't know if you noticed that, they were pretty useful. But there was this and they got tiny, tiny chairs. We then moved on, and technology started to come, and it became, we call this the era of information. But actually, a lot of that information was being processed rather than being generated by the people working with it. The management was still hierarchical, but the tools started to change. And actually, the furniture started to change. We sold huge desks. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we were selling desks for £3,000 each. Which you cannot, and we sold thousands of them because they were so big and cumbersome to cope with all that technology. And the places were still hierarchical, but they were driven by the technology. So where are we today? What is the world of work facing? And it's the same whether you're an IT company, a pharmaceutical company, or a county council. It's this, that you're now in the era of ideas. That might be the new scheme for the social services team. That might be a new idea for the finance team to come up with. It might be a new idea to get investment into your county. But somewhere is this era of ideas. And managing ideas is really, really difficult. Because this gentleman might generate ideas at 7 o'clock in the morning, But at 7 o'clock in the morning, there's snoring coming from this. Because ideas aren't predictable, and the way that we are creative is very, very different. And managing people who have ideas is really difficult. And so the way that we manage people has had to change. The tools that we're giving them is changing, and technology is playing a huge part, but also the places. Now, would you agree that place affects behavior? Yeah. Because at the moment, I'm in charge in this room. Just the way the room's been laid out. And if you want to have an argument about space doesn't affect behavior, I'd like you to take you shopping to IKEA. Anyone been to IKEA? Yeah. Anyone been to, I'm a strange man who likes shopping, so shopping's heaven for me. Anyone been to IKEA and came out with the one thing you went for? Just the one thing you went for? Well done. There's always a rebel. But generally this is what happens. You get there, the car park's massive, you can take your kids, they're welcome, and you go up those stairs or that escalator, and because we're so dumb, they've put arrows on the floor to show us the way that we go around and we walk around. There's no law that says you have to, but we do it. And they've created these environments, and as you walk around, you see that lamp. Look at that lamp, oh, look at this lamp. That's what we've been looking for, but we've come for 20 glasses. No, but this lamp, we'll need two. As you walk around, look at that picture of those pebbles. I never knew I needed a picture of pebbles. You're going to say, oh, these are rugs, these lovely rugs. And then you get downstairs and there's those gadgets and gizmos you never knew you needed. Who needs 32 different coloured bowls that all sit inside each other? You're only ever going to use 3 of them, but you buy it because what they have done is played with your mind. Space affects our behaviour. And more, the retail industry understands this hugely. The hotel industry understands this. The restaurant industry. And now we're starting to understand that actually workplace affects our behaviour. Now it isn't only place, and I'm going to come on to that a little bit in a moment. Now the other thing I wanted to say, actually culturally we can still be here whilst physically we're here. You'll see what I mean. You can design beautiful offices, but if culturally you're managing people like they work in a factory, don't care what the space is like. You can have these beautiful offices to generate ideas, but if your IT is crap, forget it. I mean, it's just not going to work. So what matters in the workplace are these 3 things. Is the management of people, the culture, the HR bit, the tools and technology, and the places. Together is where you have this kind of sweet spot, the real estate bit, the HR bit, and the IT bit. Now, you can do this, you can have the best IT and the most beautiful offices, but if people are bullied and no one does anything about it, it's not going to be productive. You can have all your health and well-being policies in place, but if the IT is rubbish and you're smashing your computer, I call our IT department the sales prevention department because I'm from a sales background. It's that's what, it's somewhere in the middle is this kind of sweet spot. And it isn't just one of those things. So what Herman Miller's created is something that we call the engine of prosperity. Prosperity is a strange word because we tend to think of this with prosperity. Prosperity is happiness or satisfaction or, success. And we've created this engine of prosperity, which is this. It's a balance between the needs of the individual and the institution, company, or corporation. That's where prosperity is. Too far this way, and we're in anarchy. Too far that way, we're in a dictatorship. Somewhere in the middle of this prosperity comes when we recognize that actually what we're managing are all these people that, I can't find it now. I found some interesting notes from a previous meeting. Yeah, that was quite useful. But actually that people, this is what the world's made up of, and we recognize the individuals. Now you can't go so far and say, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? Because you can't do that, but actually you can create an environment that gives people choices. But somewhere that what the individuals have to recognize is that the corporation or the institution matters. But somewhere in the middle is that balance. Now, the balance the other way is actually that we pay people fairly. Really important that we do this. But actually, if anyone's had a pay rise, it's scary how quickly the impact's gone. 3 months later, it's kind of, I've got used to that now. But actually, the longer impact is here, where you feel valued and you feel cared for. Or loved, if you want to be a bit soft. But it actually just feel valued. And we believe place can play a part of that. The other thing is actually to do a job that you get paid for, but do a job you love as well. Lots of research shows that if you do a job you love, you just work harder. If all you ever work for is this, I have some news for you, you will never have enough. But somewhere in the middle of this balance, by the way, what we cannot do, and my political views will come out here, is we can't capitalize on vocational professions because they love it and forget to give them some of this. So somewhere, you know, people have to eat still. Okay, so that we can't capitalize on it. I'm from a church background and my father-in-law, you know, did it this much, but they forgot this bit. He was a church minister. So there comes a point where people still have to eat and live. That's pretty important. Somewhere in the middle is this prosperity. And we believe that place, HR and IT have a part to play in that. I know there's a lot of talk in your world about resilience. This whole idea, this ability to recover from setbacks. Resilience applies to businesses and individuals, but in your world, who owns it? And in reality, everyone owns it together. And somewhere in there is marketing, and somewhere in there is that all of us own resilience. This whole idea that together we have to make sure that people can change, and in difficult times they can still keep going. Change is really hard. Change for some people have amazing benefits. One of my little tricks, I forgot to do today, is I put a tenner underneath one of the chairs. I didn't today, so don't go looking. And then during my seminar, I ask everyone to move. And the lucky person moves to the seat with a tenner in. So change was good for that person, but it was really bad for the person who's just got out of the chair. Because that's the nature of change. Change isn't always beneficial for everyone. And change and resilience go hand in hand. In this whole world, we think don't just leave it here. All of us own resilience. So we've done some research around what we call fundamental human needs. So I bet somewhere in your chart of works is a document that mentions the word millennials. Yeah? Or Generation Z. I can't remember what the next generation's going to be called or whatever. And we said, actually, let's stop doing this. Because there's so many generalizations about millennials. Because you know millennials, they're all addicted to their phone, aren't they? Well, look at some of you. Some of you aren't millennials, but you're addicted to your phone. That some of us, and sometimes it's not age, it's stage. So if you're 40, having your first child, that's a different situation than someone whose kids are grown up at 40, because it's about stage of life. So we said, actually, let's step back from that. And what are our fundamental human needs? Whether we're 6 or whether we're 60, whether we're a man or a woman, whether we're in Winchester or Warsaw, what are our fundamental human needs? And how do you meet those fundamental needs as managers, as leaders? And you meet them via place, HR, and technology. These are the 6 fundamental needs, and I'm going to go through each one of them. Anyone that's done Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you will recognize some of that. Now, the important thing here is we all need these, and if good society doesn't give them, bad society will give it. So I live on the edge of London. I lived in the East End working with kids, youth for a while. My aim was to give them these needs, because if I didn't, I mean, look what's happening in London now. What these kids are getting is these fundamental needs are being met by bad society. Because it's also, when you're 70, you need these fundamental needs. So these are the fundamental needs. The first one is security. There are 2 types of security I'm referring to here. First, it's physical security. So in our world, it's ergonomics as well. But it's also physically, that as I walk home from here to the station or wherever it is, I feel safe. So that's one part of security. But it's also, I feel safe being me. whatever my gender, my race, my religion, my ethnic background, I feel safe being me, that I feel secure. And that actually what the county council doesn't employ is a load of clones, that actually employs individuals, and you have to work how to manage those, and people feel safe being individuals. You can give me the best chair that you want and I'll be physically safe, but if you bully me, you give me a hard time, you badly manage me, that's not security. So we all need security. Another one is autonomy. Some people see the word autonomy and they hear the word anarchy. They are two very different things. Anarchy is freedom with no boundaries. Autonomy is freedom within boundaries. I'm nearly 60 and I have freedom within boundaries with my in-laws. There are things I would do in front of them and things I wouldn't do. One beer in front of them and that's it. Because it's autonomy but within boundaries. Any of you who've got kids, you'll know. By the way, if you want to be a good parent, just meet these 6 fundamental needs. And this is the one now, if you've got 9, 10-year-old, he's being challenged now. And your kids will never, ever get to a point where there are no barriers. But those boundaries are increasing. And all of us need the fundamental. So this is choice. So who's a morning person? Okay, so 7 o'clock start for you, no problem. Who's a night person? Yeah, and because we have this thing called circadian rhythms. It's this, for some people, you're bright and you're wide awake. And for some of you, working at 7 o'clock in the morning, you think, why would you do that? Because it's all about choice. Some of you like to work at home, some of you like to work with other people, some of you like noise. I mean, there's a lot of research around psychoacoustics. Acoustics are really fascinating. I'm going to do something now. Listen. Can you hear that noise? Now, some of you, that's going to wind you up for the rest of the meeting. Because the way psychoacoustics, it's just the way it works. Often acoustics is not about volume, it's about unwelcomeness. It's really annoying when you can part hear a conversation, isn't it? I don't mind if I can't understand when it's just a babble, but if I can part hear it, it's just acoustics, this whole idea that actually... So give me freedom to work the way that I want. For some people, this is really high. And by the way, autonomy might mean someone choosing to be told what to do. All right? So don't force someone just to have their own freedom all the time, because some people just are really good at doing when they're told something to do. Another one is belonging, a sense of community. Lots of research around this. In fact, lots of the Scottish government did some of this whole work around social capital in residential communities. And anyone that's involved in anything within residential communities will understand that. That's why crime goes down when there's a sense of community. People stay longer. Lots of commercial landlords have recognised that if you create a sense of belonging. And this is really important in a world where hundreds and thousands of people are miles away from their family. And belonging, they find that at work. And so does your workplace and the way you manage people make them feel like they belong? When you work for a company that you feel you belong to, you work harder. And in fact, you don't often work for the company. You'll work for, if I work with David, I'm working, 6 o'clock comes, let's go to the pub for a drink. I've got to finish this. Well, can I help you? And that sounds idealistic, but you know in your own world it matters. Because belonging matters. Now, status is an interesting one in a world where we seem to have taken away the hierarchy. That's not what we mean by status. It is just recognition for our contribution. It really does matter. Getting your name in the company magazine matters. For some people, that matters more than others, but just getting a note. I'll tell you how you can really impress someone. Get a pen. Sorry about that. Mike, I've just moved the mic now, sorry. You get a pen and you get a piece of paper and you write a little thank you note for someone that's done a great job for you. Because when was the last time you wrote a thank you note? It really does matter. It's just because we don't get them anymore. People want recognition. Status is really important. Now, for some people, the title matters. And you might say, well, it shouldn't. But what if it does? So you have to go very, very careful when we make, judgments of what gives other people status. A sense of achievement is also, you know, that when you get home, you're knackered, 9 hours a day, but you feel like you've done real good work that day. It's a gin and tonic. You feel good, but you're shattered. I call that good busy. Bad busy is when you get home at the end of the day, you've been working for 9 hours, you've not ticked any boxes off, you feel like you haven't been in control, you don't know what you've done, the bottle comes out, and it's this whole idea that achievement is really important. We want to make a difference. And this is the same for all of us. Now, what might be an achievement for you might be this big, but for you it might be this big. So this isn't the same. We're not grouping everyone together, but all of us need a sense of achievement. And the final one is a sense of purpose. This is one of the challenges. Both of these are the challenge when you retire. Anyone near retiring age, how are you going to get these? Because that's why this whole idea, that sense of purpose, why is it? Why did my father die within a year of my mother dying? Because he lost this. I mean, he wasn't ill, and suddenly, there is huge research that shows people without a sense of purpose live less, shorter lives than people with a sense of purpose. Huge amounts of research. Cardiovascular ailments are higher with people that don't have a sense of purpose. That's why unemployment is such a bad thing, because this is being affected. The other thing as well, by the way, is don't judge where people get their sense of purpose from. Because driving a bus is perfectly good enough for a person, that's where they get their sense of purpose from. Cleaning the front doorstep might just be, so don't judge what matters. Dame Carol Black, who's head of wellbeing for the government, sat with a tube driver in London and said, how do you do this all day? He said, I'm getting all these people to work. This is what I do. I love doing this. Wouldn't you want to change to another line? No, this is my line. I love doing this. And we kind of judge people, but these are the fundamental needs that we all need. And your challenge is, how do you deliver those? By place, by HR, and by IT. Because if achievement is important and the IT is crap, how do I achieve? Or the place doesn't support the way that I'm going to work, or the HR doesn't support me, how do I achieve? So that's the fundamental needs. One of the things that we try and do is measure. I'm always very careful about measurement, but what we start doing is just observing. I want to share with you some changes that we've seen in the world of work. This is a global study from around the world of hundreds of drawings on the changes that we're seeing in the world of work. And you may have already adopted these, or if you haven't, they're on their way to a lesser or greater degree. The first change we're seeing is conference rooms are changing from a standard conference rooms to a variety of settings. And some of those conference rooms don't have doors anymore. They're just meeting spaces like you've got out in the cafe area. It's really interesting. If you want a private conversation, go to a busy restaurant, not to an empty restaurant. Because actually, sometimes we don't need privacy, we just need to be able to shut ourselves off mentally from the rest of the room. So actually, we're seeing a variety of group settings, and importantly, we're seeing oversized conference rooms. I don't know about your world, but there's often too many rooms this big and not enough rooms this big, for 3 or 4 people. And those comments did come up in the thing, because often it's most meetings, we've done huge research, most meetings are for 30 minutes. The trouble is, what do you all do? Because there's an hour section in your Outlook or whatever it is, and you book it for an hour. Why? How do you know? And we booked this for an hour, so I'm going to fill it. It's that, if any of you get on conference calls and someone gets to 40 minutes, so what should we do for the other 20 minutes? Go back to your desk, go and do. Because actually this time slot is really, but most meetings are 30 minutes, 3 to 4 people. If ever there's a shortage of meeting spaces now, it's the small spaces and also easily adaptable spaces, ones that you can change really easy, a bigger need for those now. The other thing that we're seeing is assigned seats to shared work points. And you're going through this, and that's a whole new strategy of changing. But the really good video I saw to illustrate why companies and organizations are saying, why are we giving desks to people Those desks are occupied 50% of the time. And you might argue that's not, but who's sat in your desk now? Most of the time, 50 to 60% of our time, we're away from our desk. So there's a great illustration. A guy goes into a restaurant, and the restaurant is completely empty. And he says, oh, can I have a table, please? I'd like some dinner. And the maitre d' says, I'm sorry, we're full. Sorry, but can't I just sit at that table? Ah, Lucy and Jane love that table, but they come in on Tuesday nights, so we save it for them on Tuesday nights. But it's Wednesday, I know, but you know, we like to save it for them. What about that table? Well, Tony and Jim, they come in, they love to, you know, sit at that table on Thursday. Doesn't that sound stupid? Yet that's what we're doing in the world of real estate. The biggest expense in organizations is people. Often the next biggest expense is people. Sorry, is space. So this costs money. That's why we're seeing, I would love to say it's all about productivity and flexibility. The driving force is efficiency. Even more in your world when you're spending your, I don't know what you call them, people, taxpayers' money or ratepayers' money or whatever they're called. Well, doing this, it's happening around the globe now. You know, I've been to Saudi Arabia 10 years ago and they said this will never happen. It's starting to happen. Moscow, never going to happen. It's starting to happen. It is. Now, to do this is really difficult, but it's not impossible. And we are seeing this more and more. And there's lots of tricks about that, and I would happily share you more insights into that. The other thing that we're seeing, and this has come up again in your feedback, is that now we're seeing a move from privacy as a luxury. In other words, I've got an office because I'm a boss, to privacy when I need it. And by the way, privacy sometimes just means don't disturb me. So headphones are often, or I don't know if you allow them here, but often people put headphones on as a way of saying, don't disturb me. There's this thing called social fugal and social petal, where you can bring people towards you, you know, put a bowl of Smarties on your desk, see what happens. Or you can drive people away. And it's really clever. Have you ever done that? Have you ever sat on a bus and you see someone you know, and yet you can go the whole journey without making eye contact with them because you don't want to talk to them? That's where we can drive people away or pull people towards us. And this whole idea that sometimes we just need an opportunity to be private. And it could be we need a acoustically private office. So when this gentleman is ringing to move his millions of euros from one account to another because, you know, the price has changed, he might want to ring his bank and do it in a private space. So privacy when he needs it, not just because of his job title. And that's the same for every one of us, that we're seeing this huge change. Privacy when we need it, not just as a luxury. The other thing that matters is the circulation within a building is changing. It's no longer about getting to a space and going to your desk. That actually there's this whole research about chance encounters. You know, coffee and tea around the way. And you can still go to your desk, but have you heard of the term bump knowledge? Always worry about people bumping into each other all the time. But this whole idea that so much of what you found out about will not be via these formal broadcasts. A lot of it is just chit-chat. It's this whole idea that these chance encounters, and I liken this to New York and Milan. Milan is a place, I go to there quite a lot, and remember I'm a man who likes shopping, so I just try and go to the same place, but I walk different ways. Whereas New York, the choices are quite limited, and you're going to go there. And that whole idea that this is much more organic as opposed to geometric. By the way, that was in that book 50 years ago as well. Really interesting. We've only taken 50 years to get there. And the fast one is what we call, the last one is distant break rooms to central plazas. And you've got your central plaza here. I have to tell you, you are incredibly forward-thinking county council, okay? So you need to pat yourselves on the back for doing a fantastic job. We just had a meeting out there and it works perfectly well. The trouble with breakout spaces that are too far away is no one goes there, but this becomes a central hub. I liken this to the village community centre, or the village pub, or the village church, or the village mosque, or whatever it is, where people go there, and you can work on your own, but you can work together. And that central hub, it's that kind of heart of the building, we're seeing much more of those. So that's some of the changes we're seeing. So another piece of research we did is some more observation. We just have lots of researchers traveling around. And they just watched what people did during their day. And they observed what people were doing. And they looked at about 30 to 40 different activities. And they've managed to narrow it down to 10 activities. And any of you are doing these activities during the day. Now, what's important is, how important is the activities to you, and how well do you support them? Physically and culturally and via IT, okay? That's really important, because you can support it physically, but if a boss frowns upon you when you're doing one of these things, that's not supporting it. 7 of these activities are activities that we do together, and 3 are alone. I run workshops that find out how important these are, and not everyone needs all 10. But you probably need more than one. So you might, in your mind now, want to think, actually, I know where I do that. I do that there, and so have a think about it and find. And these are the 10 activities. The first one is chat. Informal chat, unplanned. It doesn't have to be about work. Sometimes it is, but it's informal chat. Usually involves a cup of coffee. Any Swedish people here? In Sweden, they have something called fika. And fika is almost, if someone says to you, okay, we're going to go for a fika, it's a compulsory coffee break. And once you've invited someone for a fika, it's the 10-minute, it's usually cake. Is that a good idea? And it's that whole idea that chat is really important. Now, we did some research around the psychology of collaboration. And often we confuse interaction with collaboration. But interaction is this. But the research shows the more you do this, the more likely you are, or the more beneficial a collaboration goes. That whole idea that this is really important. This happens in lots of spaces. Smokers in the room. If you want to know any gossip, ask the smoker. Because I don't know if anyone watched Friends. There was an episode with Rachel on Friends who took up smoking just so that she could get a part of the gossip. This is really fundamental stuff, which is, by the way, why that this starts to be important as well. That if you don't support that chat, it's really important. And remember, you have to support this culturally as well as physically, because it still could be productive. The next one is slightly different. We call this converse, where it's 3 or 4 people, where it's usually a planned meeting. You've got a purposeful task. It might involve a bit of technology. If ever you want to watch, do you do conference calls? You have to Google a brilliant video called A Conference Call in Real Life. It is unbelievably outstanding and funny and hilarious. But it might involve technology. But this is the one where we don't have enough spaces for. And by the way, it doesn't have to be inside a room, but sometimes it does. It's that whole thing. We've gone beyond chat. We're actually addressing a task. Slightly different to the next one, which is co-create, where we start to use some analog tools. We might use digital tools, but it's a co-create space or activity, should I say, which people come and go. It's not always a fixed time. You might go back to it. And we need to support this with the right kind of spaces and the right kind of culture. My US colleagues must keep Post-it note company in business. They just use thousands of Post-it notes because they still have a value. And that whole idea that space or whiteboards or whatever, that this is generation of new ideas. That's slightly different to this one, which is, so this might be a creative project team, but this is an active project team. Divide and conquer can sound quite negative. But what we mean by that is anyone that works on project teams, you don't work together all the time. And yet often project teams, everyone's made to work together, but often you want to go and work on your own and then come back together. We call that divide and conquer. So we've had a meeting. Okay, you could do this, divide, but during those couple of days, I want you to be nearby so can we have a quick chat about that? So nearby, but not sat together all the time. We call that activity divide and conquer. The next one is huddle, One of the changes in the world of work is speed. Does anyone ring you and say you can have another 2 weeks on that project? It's always, or there's a disaster. I'm in the world of manufacturing. We do huddling a lot because anyone in the software world, IT world, they call these scrums. Because a lot of the time you have to deal with this now. The trouble is, it's often impromptu. You don't want to, the formality of booking a room. You've got to deal with it now, and it's often just 10 minutes. Okay, assigned task, you do that, you do that. And I bet in your world you get that all the time. That whole idea, you've got to address an urgent issue. How many of you have tried to set up a meeting? Are you available Thursday? You can't do Thursday. Can you do Wednesday? You go, why don't you do it now? Let's get together now. I know there's only 7 of the 12 people, but we'll get something done. Have you ever those emails that go to and fro? It's really hard, but sometimes a huddle will solve it. Not always, but it's really important. Show and tell, spaces like this are really important, whether it's to your public, whether it's to your customers or to your internal, that planned information sessions is still important. And the last one of the together modes is something that came out of the work we did on the psychology of collaboration. In this work we found out lots of work about introverts and extroverts. This is where I want to say stand on your chair now if you're an introvert. But there's a brilliant talk, TED talk by a lady called Susan Cain. And she says we design workplaces mostly for extroverts. And they're often designed by extroverts and the decisions are taken by extroverts. But 30 to 40% of us are introverts. And many of us are introverted in certain stages. This came out of that research. What it said is sometimes the most important part of a meeting is the bit before and the bit after for an introvert, because during the meeting they don't say anything. So go into a meeting and this lady's an extrovert, so I'm an introvert, and I say, I hope they raise this issue during that meeting. What am I really saying? I hope you raise that issue during that meeting. And afterwards you come out and, can I just check this little thing? And in fact, most of us need this whole idea of warm up, cool down as well. Space, but try not to book meeting after meeting after meeting. Have you ever been in a meeting and you think, I can't remember this is this meeting or the last meeting? That's the 7 together modes. The alone modes, the first one is process and respond. This is the stuff that we all do. All those other 7 activities have created work, and that's what this is. You know when you've worked for 2 hours and you kind of think, crumbs, is that the time? Where you've not had to think about it. Slightly different to the next activity, which is create. In other words, you're on your own. I don't mean in a private office, but you're working alone, but you're being creative. Whether that's around a spreadsheet, whether that's around a PowerPoint, whether that's around a project plan, but you're needing time to think about it. You may have even switched off your emails at that point because you're being creative. And the final one is contemplate. This whole time, you don't have to lay on a sofa to do this, by the way. But just 10 minutes thinking time. Just a bit of silence. Now for some people, silence is hell. But for some people, silence is the air that they breathe. This is just 10 minutes. It can make all those other 9 activities really productive, just 10 minutes. And if I'm stood staring out the window, I can still be working. It's really important. So that's the 10 activities. Your challenge is, how do you support those physically? How do you support them via HR? And how do you support them via IT? And then we've created lots of spaces. We call these the 10 settings that support those activities. I'm going to jump that. And I just wanted to finally finish with what we are seeing, businesses, organizations and institutions. What are the most important things? Attracting and retaining top talent is really important. And both those are important. Don't get the best talent and don't look after them. That's always a challenge. Attract good people and retain them. That's a top priority. It's the reason someone will locate to an area, because the talent pool is there. Stimulating innovation. This is the same for a pharmaceutical company, a government department, a bank. Innovation is absolutely key. By the way, innovation is not ideas. ideas applied is innovation. You can have 1,000 ideas, but if you never apply them, I mean, you know who invented digital photography? A company called Kodak. They just didn't apply it. So they had the ideas, they just didn't come up with the innovation, the application of the ideas. Increase in efficiency. We cannot get away from the fact that every business is looking to efficiency, though, with effectiveness. No good saving money if it's reducing effectiveness. Knowledge sharing is important. I don't know what your statistics are, but a lot of government statistics show that you're going to lose some of your most knowledgeable people in the next 5 to 10 years. That, with all the software there is, you can't capture it. So you need this. You need people to be able to share their knowledge and share their experience. We need to create environments for that. And finally, brand connection. I've used the word engagement, where you feel like you're a part of the business. Huge amount of research shows that people that feel connected work harder, they stay longer. So I think I'm going to stop there because my time is up. I hope you found that interesting. The world of work is changing, but it's changing at different levels for each of us. And for some of you, what I've said will scare the life out of you. And for some of you will say, I heard it all before, Mark. And that's because we're all at different levels. Your challenge is to make people go home at the end of the day happy. It's a simple goal, but it's a really difficult goal to achieve. It is that actually people walk to work looking forward to their day at work. And that's our job as managers. How do we do that? And your job is to create the place, the culture, and give them the IT that means that they can reach their full potential. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mark. That was very interesting. Can we take any questions? There's Emily on this side of the room, and I shall stand on the other side. Have at least, 7 minutes, we want to be exact. I'd like to give your name and ask questions.
Adrian Owen, thanks, Mark, for that. The question about sort of video conferencing and similar solutions, I mean, how do you see that as both a help potentially and a hindrance in the environment that we're moving into?
Okay, so there was this time when it was these incredibly expensive rooms that cost thousands, and now we can do it via our phone. There are two challenges there. Acoustics, as in people video conferencing, that's why sometimes you just need to be away. But it's what I call the hierarchy of communication. It's absolutely valid, but use it carefully and don't just use it because someone's on the next floor and you can't be bothered to go and meet them, because that's what we use email for sometimes. So I think it's valid, but you have to think about the impact you're having, because once you've got your headphones on and you're video conferencing, you forget there are people nearby, and again, you may have guidelines. I think with video conferencing, you need guidelines, you need instructions. There is also IT challenges about using the bandwidth. I mean, if you have loads of you are video conferencing all the time, you might have such great IT here that that's not a problem. But I think it's there, but I also think you need guidelines. There's an etiquette about it, as there is about the mobile phone. Who whispers into a mobile phone? Nobody does. We never used to speak this loud on an old corded phone. I don't know why, but now we shout. And I'll tell you what I think is the biggest challenge coming to the world of work. Alexa for work. Look at it. Google, Amazon, they're now selling you an Alexa at every desk. Alexa! So I couldn't work out whether if you've got a similar voice where everyone is Alexa. But that is, the whole idea of acoustics. But I think it's valid, it's useful, but it's got to be used very carefully.
Anybody else? Pass the microphone.
David Fletcher. I'm fascinated, Mark, by your point about the meeting spaces. Slightly left field question. Is there an optimum length of a meeting?
Yeah, it's about 1 hour. No, in fact, what we're seeing is companies are starting to develop 40-minute meetings, just so that you then don't book the whole hour. So I don't know whether that's about optimum length, but most of my talks are 45 minutes because you get to a point where you've gone. Some of you have left me 10 minutes, 15 minutes ago. It's a fact. No matter how good the speaker is, you've gone. So 40 minutes is the things that was. You try it. Try book it. You'll confuse anyone you're inviting to the meeting. But try the meeting at 12 minutes past 3 and take it round to whatever, 13:52 or 15, to see what happens. But again, though, you're asking me to make a generalisation. And that's the real challenge. You've been in a meeting and within 10 minutes, you've lost people. Because their mind is somewhere else. And there's not a lot you can do about that.
I mean, the reason I asked the question is because, I mean, we have meetings sometimes that are 3 hours long. Yeah. And personally, my attention span struggles with that. And I suspect others do, but culturally, we still accept that. And I think we do need to start challenging it, not just the space that we meet in, but for how long of that 3 hour meeting are we truly productive? That's the question.
I think that is 3 hour meeting. Yeah, we've, 2-day meetings off-site are slightly different to a 3 hour meeting on-site. And I'll send you the paper around the psychology of collaboration as well, because that is fascinating, this whole idea that even the light and the colour affect some people. There's something that's called the curve of stimulation. So I just wanted to use your pen so that you make sure that it's... So for an extrovert to be productive, they need lots of stimulation. They need, you've got noise, you've got colour, light, lots of stimulation before they're productive. What does that do to extroverts? Their productivity goes down, really way down. And that's a huge challenge. And meetings are like that. That actually, if there's this is a nice calm room, but if there's too much going on, it's why some spaces work for you and they don't. And meeting spaces are like that. Collaboration, when it's too, come on everyone, people are going, what's he doing? It's kind of, calm down. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. On that calm note, I think we can say thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you very much.
So we'd like to say thank you very much, Mark, for joining us today. It's been very interesting indeed. We'll be posting a link to the recording, and also we'll continue with some more post-event engagement content around this topic for you to look at. We'll also be sending you a link, which is our feedback survey, so really appreciate it if you can take some time to fill that in. We do have a Slido question. If you can open up your mobile phones, it would be really great, and we have a hashtag for the question, I think Mark is searching for, but if you can open up Slido on your mobile phones and key in the hashtag 4402, we have 2 survey questions. So the first one should be online now. Emily's posted it. That would be great. And we'll share these with you afterwards on the Yammer link. Okay. Already found it? Okay. Should be simple, one word, I think. Okay, we're going to close that survey link now, and then a second question should appear, and that will be it. And that's posted now. Okay. Right, again, finally, thank you for spending 60 minutes with us this afternoon for a late lunch and learn. We look forward to your feedback, and our next event will be in May, and you will receive invitation details around that, but in the afternoon between 2 and 4. So thank you very much for attending. Hope you have a good afternoon, the rest of it. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Thanks very much.